There we go. Just in case we answer some questions that some other students may have been asking in the meantime. So happy you're here, Carlin. It's good to see you. Niall, great to see you. It's great to have some of you here. I didn't recognize your names. My name is Maddie, and I am the program coordinator for the Global Business School Network. And I am the point of contact for the HUMLOG Challenge, which has been super exciting in development. And I'm joined here today with 4 of our judges. I believe one more is on the way, Ms. Noni. She's just finishing up a class. And so what we're going to do is we're just going to go around the room, and I'm going to have the judges introduce themselves and then give a little bit of what their expertise is, and then just kind of something that they're looking for in your solution development. Afterwards, we'll open it up to ask questions. You can put the questions in the chat. You can turn on your camera. You can raise your hand, whatever you think is easiest. I am specifically here to answer any logistical questions about the competition in general. So if you do have those types of questions, I'm here for that. But our judges are mostly here for those content-based questions, those solutions-based questions. So with that, I'm going to pass it on to our head judge, Gyöngyi.
Hello, really nice to meet you all, and I'm looking forward to you just writing also in the chat who you are and where you're from and what you want wanting to do. And please, really, as Maddie said, put your questions in there. So as Maddie said, I'm going to be your head judge, which is really like, you know, I'm going to be super kind of strict and like the headmaster kind of thing. Not at all. But I am a professor in humanity and logistics, and this is why the HUMLOG Challenge is really into humanity and logistics. And what it also means for you is, please, I would love to see some logistics and supply chain management in your solutions, but that's not necessarily the main question of this particular call this time. So focus on preparedness. That's one of the issues we are looking for. Focus on your community's problems and really make it shine through what you are dealing with, which kinds of disasters you are dealing with, what kinds of solutions you are suggesting. And the more innovative and creative you are, the better. But just very quickly from experience from last year, you cannot even imagine how different the particular solutions that we get can be. And that's the beauty of it. So we are looking forward to this huge variety of what you can come up with. And really, any questions in the chat while the other ones are also talking? I might be a bit monitoring that as well. And Maddie, I know as well, so we can do a bit of Q&A through that as well.
Thank you so much, Gyöngyi. And just reiterating, yes, it's very important. The local aspect, the community aspect of your solutions is super important. I'm now going to pass it on to Armand, who is to my left on the screen. If you just want to introduce yourself, your expertise, and kind of what you're looking for in solutions.
Thanks, Maddie. So I head up Stellenbosch University's Business School Social Impact Portfolio. And I've worked within the nonprofit sector for over 2 decades. And so what I'm looking for is seeing how you are able to articulate the closeness to the problem. So whether you actually get to understand the community that you are working with, how collaborative your solutions or your processes are, whether it is that you create an ecosystem for further innovation. And then just the idea of whether it's new ideas or old ideas you're taking forward. So those are the things, quite a pragmatic way and approach to addressing disasters.
Absolutely. Couldn't agree more with that sentiment. And then to my right, I have Amedee. So if you want to do the same, introduce yourself and what you're looking for in your expertise.
Thank you, Maddie. Hello, everyone. I'm Amedee Prouvost. I was a board member of GBSN and now serve on the academic advisory board. But unlike kind of most of the other judges, I am not an academic. I'm a practitioner. I was responsible for non-financial risk at the World Bank for the last 7 years. And as you can imagine, we were very much tested not only on a regular basis before the pandemic, but as a result of the COVID crisis. So what am I looking for? I think like others before me, I would say I'm looking for things which are concrete and specific. I would love to see the teams show that they're having fun working together. And I would also hope that the teams can focus not only on the technical aspects of the solution, but also on the human side. No solution will last forever. What's important is what are the decision-making aspects and how that solution will continue to change and adapt, and how the community will continue to grow together and feel empowered. I'll stop here.
Well, I couldn't agree more, and that kind of harkens back to what Armand said about, new solutions as well as building on the old and making a legacy in those solutions development. And then last for now, before Noni gets here, Pete from Florida. We were speaking about Florida a little bit before this. He also has a great practical experience. If you want to introduce yourself as well and what you're looking for.
Good morning. Yeah, I come from the response world. I'm a retired firefighter. I was an assistant fire chief with the city of Miami, 35 and a half years. And then I was the last probably 10 years or so, the city's emergency manager. So I, living in Florida and Hurricane Alley, specifically down in Miami, hurricanes and climate change and sea level rise is very important to us in this area. The last year or so, I've been working at Florida International University as the senior director of the Academy for International Disaster. But when I got hired, COVID hit and they tapped me to run a COVID testing site. So I basically ran a COVID testing site for a year and a few months, and I just basically got into my work here at FIU. But what I was looking for is, and I mentioned sea level rise and I mentioned climate change, is somewhere along those lines, a solution or some kind of thesis in that world, and specifically to climate gentrification, because we're starting to see it here in South Florida. It's affecting those that live in higher areas, because the people with the money are starting to buy out the people without the money that are living in those areas. Those areas just so happen to be higher elevation, so they're being affected by it. So I would like to see something along those lines.
Thank you so much, Pete. And that climate change aspect is just absolutely crucial to some of these solutions. I believe, Gyöngyi, I don't know if you saw, we had our first question in the chat. Let's see here, and that is from, I hope I'm saying your name right, Gita Pat. And that is regarding how important is primary source research in determining the outcome of the presentation? What percentage of primary to secondary source material do you recommend to use towards formulating a solution to the problem? So I'm going to open that up to some of our academics over here, Gyöngyi, if you want to go ahead.
Yeah, I can maybe go ahead. I think the best solutions that we've seen are the ones that have reached out to their own community and actually collected the data to see, like, what is it that community faces and what is it that you can really bring back as a solution to them, which is the easiest to do if you actually have primary research as well. So that's, if you can bring that forward and also document it, how you've discussed with the community, how you brought that data together, that's going to make your solution a lot more applicable to the community as well, and by definition better.
Wonderful. I don't know if any of the other judges wanted to add anything along that. Abdel, I did notice that the page limit is only 5 pages. Without the references, it exceeded 5 pages. So could the references be placed in an appendix and annex? Absolutely. We're super flexible on that. 5 pages, when we mean that, 5 pages of text, 5 pages of text and of valuable material in that. If you want to only have 3 pages of text, that's absolutely fine. But I'm going to pass the primary source question on to Armand, Peter, or Amedee if they wanted to add anything.
So just to because Amedee, I also want to say I'm a practitioner, you know. That's really what I am first. An activist before it is that I'm an academic. And so the notion of models and frameworks and theories are useful, but a participatory and participatory action approach is really useful in situations like this when we're working with communities, because ultimately what you would like is for the solution to come from the ground up. And I think that's very important. It's wonderful. And one needs to obviously have a scholarly approach to this within a setting like this in some ways, but don't be led by that only. It's that notion of getting to grips with the problem, discussing it, being close to it. And that doesn't always happen with other academics. And so this is the wonderful challenge here, is you get to speak to people who understand from that perspective what it is that you're trying to address.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Armand. And you do have the best of both worlds for sure, between a practitioner and being on campus. Pete, I think this might be a good question for you from Mikey. Will a profit-bearing solution have a better chance than a nonprofit one?
Is he asking in the real world, or is he asking in the competition world?
So Mikey, do you want to clarify a bit? Competition world.
Competition world. I don't know. I don't think it's going to make an effect on how I look at things. Although in the real world, you know, a profit-bearing idea or solution would definitely be big on a politician's agenda.
I agree. And if anyone else wants to add anything to that, real quick, Jessica, I know we've had a little bit of back and forth regarding schedule and presentation of the program, as far as what that's going to look like. The solution is on the 24th, but if you wanted to ask any specific questions in the meantime, and I'm of course happy to go back and forth with you, but just to go back to the question on profit-bearing versus nonprofit, and then we have another question after that. And I see we also have Noni here. Great to see you. Great to have you here. She is another one of our lovely judges. We will have you introduce yourself in just a second. I just wanted to tackle this question real quick. Did anyone else have anything else to add as far as a profit-bearing solution versus a nonprofit one in the competition world?
Maddie, this is a
sorry.
difficult question to answer, because I think the reality is that we're talking about kind of resilience at the community level or community-led projects. The issue of where the resources come from can be defined narrowly or broadly. So I think we really want to focus on the sustainability over the longer term and the adaptability. I think it's okay to think that any major resilience undertaking will draw on multiple kind of sources in terms of resources. So I don't think we are dogmatic about that. And then going back to the point made by Armand, I certainly didn't mean to oppose pragmatic, I would say, practitioners with academics. I think the reality, I love the way he put it. I think that in practice, while kind of you would think about how solutions will arise out of the evidence in front of you, to be able to develop models or to think in structures is actually very helpful, because that probably will give us an opportunity to think about scaling things up, kind of reproducing those solutions in other communities as well. So there too, no dogmatism, and I think that the ideas that we draw from practitioners and kind of and at the same time from the academic side, and we would want to, obviously, if you can crowd in all kinds of resources to create solutions which in fact have the broadest possible endorsement and buy-in, I think that would be ideal. Over.
Thank you so much, Amedee. Noni, if we can take this time just to have you introduce yourself as well, And what we did is we did some introductions as well as kind of what you're looking for in the solutions. And then I noticed that I believe it was Abdel, you had a couple questions, so I'll make sure to get those afterwards.
Hi, thank you for having me. It's nice to be here. So my name is Nonhlanhla Dube. I am from Zimbabwe and working at Lancaster University as a lecturer. I have a bit of experience with the field, so I worked for Doctors Without Borders in Zimbabwe for a few years, and also with them in the Netherlands before I decided to become an academic. So the humanitarian sector is in my heart because it's something I started to see from practice, and now I sort of look at it from a distance and kind of miss that contact with the field. And then in terms of what I would be looking for in a good project, I think it's the things that I already see in the comments. So it has to be focused, and it has to be something that is on one hand quite simple and down to earth in a sense, but also impactful. So it could be a small thing that has the capacity to bring about a major change for communities. And it also has to be sustainable or viable. So if you come up with a solution, is it something that can take care of itself or continue to exist beyond you as a group? So if it's something that becomes too complex that it can't take care of itself, becomes a bit tricky. And yeah, I think those for me will be the most important thing. Like if you can surprise me with simplicity, and also be able to find something that a community can own, because it's about community resilience. So more empowerment and less of sort of taking away that agency by giving a lot. I don't know what the question on profitability was about, but I suppose it sort of touches on that. Like, can you find ways to allow communities to sustain themselves and be less dependent and use their agency more to be creative, because they already have that capacity. And I think sometimes humanitarianism takes that away.
Oh, I think we lost someone, but that was wonderful. And I think that also assisted in one of Abdel's, your question was about different ways of tackling natural disasters. You asked about bringing in more ideas. Is it better to bring in a couple more ideas, or rather stick with one idea and one solution? So I think that assisted with answering that. But Gyöngyi, I don't know if you wanted to add anything.
I think Noni just put it exactly how it should be. Because I think generally, if you have a very well focused solution, that will be a better one. If you have a lot of ideas, they can be easily scattered. So simplicity can be key. Also, if you are focused, you can go much more in depth in that solution within these 5 pages. So you can really bring forward, like, you know, all the uniqueness and the novelty of your solution much better.
Absolutely. And then Abdel, a third question from Abdel. And then Kyoto, we'll get to your question about policy recommendations. Those tend to be more top down and more bird's eye view. Would they count, or would you prefer more bottom up grassroots level? So I believe that's more like a community level. So welcome for anyone to take that. And then I see Mike and Kyoto. So
I think both are important. I mean, obviously from the grassroots level, you want to know, what the community needs to do or can do to, to figure out the resiliency solutions. But if you give solutions from the top down, it helps with the policymakers to be able to come up with, the bird's eye view, the 1,000-foot view of how to tackle a particular issue. So I would venture to say both are important. It just, they're going to have different times of when you can implement them.
I think that's a wonderful response, and I don't know if anyone else wants to add anything. And especially on top of that, because thank you, Noni, about the 5 pages. You went right into that. So does anyone else have anything to say about grassroots versus the bird's eye view?
Yeah, I think to add on to what Pete has already said, the two do need to coexist. I think it's also a natural way in which even organizations evolve. So there is something from the top bottom that can help, like, okay, so decisions about allocations of resources and what sort of things need to be focused on, but there can also be a lot to be learned from grassroots. So it doesn't necessarily have to be one or the other. It's probably how you balance the two in order to get the best possible outcomes. But I would say a tendency towards the focus on the grassroots is more important because it's one part that's less understood and sort of neglected.
Thank you so much, Noni. And Kyoto, I believe you had your hand up first. So if you want to, go ahead and ask your question.
Sure. First, thanks everyone for taking your time to answer all of our questions. And mine's kind of a structural question, but also, I guess, towards the judges. I mean, you gave a great introduction for who you are and what your backgrounds are. Should this written piece be written to an audience of the judges in mind with their expertises, or to the colleagues, fellow students, or to does it depend on your report, or is there a standard that you hope for us to write as the intended audience for this piece?
Anyone's welcome to answer that. Gyöngyi?
I actually have to say, can you please repeat it? I wasn't quite sure what the question was.
Yeah, so I'm curious as to who the intended audience of our report should be. So if we're working with the community, should we be writing it for community members, or if it's policymakers, or should we be writing it for academics, or what is it? What's the level of what kind of, how informed should the audience be when we're putting together the report?
Okay, all of the above.
Great, do everything.
No, I mean, the solution does have the policy part. The solution does have especially the solution parts. I mean, obviously there is that part of it. In terms of an academic thing, it is of course great if you can build on extant research and especially on extant solutions. It's easier to argue for a new solution if you can relate it to what already exists in the market, for example. But then you can also think of us if you want to, like, you know, as an investment team, would we want to actually put our money on you? And I'm sure that Amedee can really criticize all the projects from that perspective very quickly.
Thank you, Amedee.
Sorry, yeah, no, since Gyöngyi calls on me. Look, I think that probably your question implicitly refers to the fact that every institution has its own language, right? And often there is a tremendous amount of energy spent on formality rather than substance. And so we, inside the World Bank, used to talk about the language called World Bankese, which kind of had a tendency to kind of rely excessively on the passive form. Nobody was ever responsible for anything. Things were happening by themselves in some ways. And so I think we want something which is authentic, which is your voice. And I think that, I mean, we as a group, hopefully somewhat representative of the fact that this is an exercise which covers the whole planet. We may not be perfectly representative of every community, but I think we want to look at it in a way which is not constrained by a particular level of formality. I think it's the authenticity. You only have 5 pages, maybe if I understand it correctly, with maybe a separate annex for references, but I think that it just kind of get to the point. So don't worry about that. I hope, obviously this is new for me, and I know that this competition has taken place in the past. So if Maddie or Gyöngyi think that they should correct me, please go ahead. But that would be my expectation.
No, I think you hit the nail on the head. Kyoto, I hope that helped answer some of your question?
It does. I'll write down simple, authentic, and to the point, and that should do it.
Perfect, perfect. And Mikey, I see you've had your hand raised for a bit, and then Carlin and Samuel, I see questions in the chat, so we'll get to you.
Hi. Good evening, good morning, and good afternoon to everyone. Thank you. My question is, I would like to resonate Samuel Abreu's question regarding the cycle. So, so I believe the rubrics for the solution would be the same, whether if it's preventive, if it's post, or whichever part of the cycle will be. And my second question would be, how will there would it be important that the solution be flexible to other neighboring countries, or does it have to be specifically for one region?
So I thank you first of all for asking kind of the similar question to Samuel as far as the 3 complete levels of humanitarian logistics, or if we focus on one. So let's start with that. Opening it up to the group of judges here.
Can I jump in on the question of what I hear? Is it Mickey or Mikey?
Mikey.
Mikey talk about something about culture. And so obviously every community has its own culture, its own practices. And I think that you want something which you can demonstrate will work in at least one community. And yet there are some universal principles about what makes a risk culture dynamic and healthy and productive. And I think a lot of it has to do with the adaptability, the curiosity, kind of the way to, I would say, ask questions and listen to the answers and change your mind and adapt and so on. So it's a bit about, I think that if you don't try to simplify the cultural aspects, I think that we could probably see what is indeed universal out of the example you're going to be putting forward. And it goes back to the conversation we had with Keto about simplicity and authenticity. I think that's something which is grounded, but will speak to a broader universe of communities. It will probably be obvious to kind of to us that it can work somewhere else. But I'll stop here. I'm just kind of again, I'm speculating here. So over to the other speakers.
Armand, I know you've been active in the chat, so I didn't know if you wanted to add anything.
It was just to the point of the transferability of a solution. I think that adds value to any sort of proposal or solution that one offers. It might not be replicated in the same manner in different locations, but the ability to take something and say, okay, well, in this location, it worked in this way. If we take it across, let's see what happens. So that notion of transferability for me in any sort of community-based project is key to how you sustain it, you know, and how it continues to grow.
So, Mikey, I think that transferability part, as they said, is important. And then as far as that one specific piece that Samuel and you were referring to, I think that focusing on that solution development in the area that can be transferred is important, but I would love for the judges to just kind of reiterate as well. Gyöngyi or Noni or Pete, did you have anything else to add to that? All right. Mike, did you have any other questions at the moment?
No, thank you. So transferability is the key point. Thank you.
Is the key, of course. We're getting quite a few questions on the creative illustration. So as far as expectations, judges, we had, and Gyöngyi knows this, we had quite a few different types of submissions. We had videos, we had PDFs, that sort of thing. But what are you hoping to see as far as a reflection of that written piece?
Well, I can only speak for myself. That is the substance that's going to make a huge difference. And I think if any of you have sat in a classroom, you will know that we are the worst at illustrations. So we appreciate them when we see them and we love them. But more than that, we are interested in the substance. So if a nice visual underlies an already very good idea, that is excellent. But if there is a really nice visual, but the underlying idea needs more work, it's probably not going to do as well as a really, really good idea that was not presented in the most flattering way. That will be how I take it.
And I agree. I appreciate a good presentation, a good PowerPoint or a good video, a good storyline, but you have to have substance. Without the substance, I mean, I've seen some tremendous PowerPoint presentations that have told me absolutely nothing. And yet I have others, give good presentations, just stand up and speak and get to the substance and do a real good job. So I agree. The substance is more important.
Absolutely. And Amedee?
Can I just add, I think that obviously we're talking about solutions which work at the local community level. And I'm thinking about the fact that there might be communities where there are literacy issues, where ultimately are language issues, when essentially you might be people might be speaking different languages. So I think that sometimes, what do they say? A picture is worth 1,000 words. So we certainly kind of would love to see if that emerges in your project, and there is something which indeed can be a wonderful explanation which would make clear to everybody in the community and beyond. I think that would be awesome.
I couldn't agree more. And Gyöngyi, you brought up a really great point as far as since this competition is in English and we understand that that is not all everyone's native tongue, we are looking at that content. We're not looking at your grammar. We're not looking at any of that. If you want to submit a video that's in your native language and then have English translation at the bottom, that's also great as well. So the team last year that won speaks primarily Spanish, and so they had to do quite a bit of practicing as far as answering questions and doing some translation. So we're welcome to work with you. Abdel, I see your hands raised, and I do want to get to the point as far as I know you had a 15-page document in a separate competition. There are a couple of reasons as to why we have selected the 5-page limit. First of all, we do have quite a bit of teams, and we have a separate set of preliminary judges who do have to read all of the content within a certain amount of time. The additional component to that is we do have this creative piece that we're hoping is what assists in this 5 pages. So as the judges have reiterated a couple times, keeping things concise is super important, especially in the business world, but we do understand, you have had this great research. So I hope that helped answers your question, but please feel free to ask other ones as well. Is this the creative submission question?
Yeah, it just quite honestly, I keep receiving mixed messages because one, you have to be focused on one thing. So more like it will be a pitch competition and on a certain idea that is developed and precise and concise. But on the other hand, we need to have this consultancy preview, and we need to have a holistic approach to the challenge, because the challenge is to tackle a natural disaster, and a natural disaster like wildfires, for example, would have environmental, socioeconomic, and would have lots of implications for the community and for the state and for the world. In that case, I am getting flashbacks from all the hackathons and competitions I have been, and I keep hearing the same thing, 2 conflicting messages about the approach of the presentation and the submission. That's one thing. And the other thing about the creative submission, what kind of creativity are you looking for? Illustrations, drawings, poetry, story, what kind of creative material? Because, for example, I write poetry, so I could write poetry about it. Would you be interested in something like that?
So I'm just going to help answer this first one just a little bit. So I do apologize that this isn't necessarily a hackathon. This isn't necessarily a case competition. This competition is not for you to solve one big natural disaster in the world. This competition is community centric, that solves a problem that is caused by a natural disaster within a local community that can be transferred. And so some of those examples in the handbook were, for example, not knowing how to use generators in places like Houston, Texas, when there's a hurricane. And so there becomes a lot of carbon dioxide poisoning. And so a solution could be community trainings on how to use generators that could be transferred to other communities. So I think that is kind of, that's more along the lines of what we're looking for. But Gyöngyi, I see you nodding your head and I would love for you to jump in.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I mean, I do feel your pain that it feels sometimes like conflicting messages, because that it can be like that at times. But what is really key is that you find one problem that is in your community, an actual problem that stems from the repercussions of a natural hazard that has turned into a disaster for the population. Now, that will be unique for sure for you. This is what we've discussed about the primary data as well, that, you know, like, how do you argue for your problem? So make sure it's community based and centered, and that you find something that is very, very grounded in where you live. Then it comes in terms of solutions. We've had in the last year, for example, solutions that did suddenly tick a lot of boxes. And it is just to give you the example of the winning team last year. Their solution was a water catching device that was delivered to a very rural community of an indigenous population. And they went through all the supply chain issues with that, and they went through the technological development, and actually they found that this was the one thing that would solve a lot of problems of that indigenous population in the pandemic. So in a sense, it can be easily ticking a lot of boxes, even though you've got one solution. In addition to that, though, I mean, as opposed to a hackathon, we are not really kind of that much into the startup pitch, but easily, of course, solutions become these kinds of questions. Okay, so how would you then really make it happen? And one of the things that this challenge now does, also as opposed to the previous year, is that there is this whole added element of like, we might want to actually help you make it happen.
Absolutely. Does anyone else want to add anything about that, especially that community piece? Okay, and then as far as the creativity piece, the poetry piece, that's amazing. What a wonderful talent. Judges, I'm not sure what your opinions are on that. We did open it up to creativity, and we have not seen any of poetry, but would love to. Okay, so Gyöngyi says it's up to you. Just make it work with your solution. Amedee.
Yeah, I want to refer to something which Noni said in the chat. She said, also remember that we are learning from you. We don't know it all. Your mission is to teach us. So think of how creative you are, the teacher. I mean, there are no limits to creativity. Just kind of find a way to grab our attention and get us excited. And so I love poetry, I love art. And so I think that, you know, I wish all my teachers had been artists as well. So good luck.
Amazing. And I think we even had a couple submissions last year that were like graphics that were designed. They look like paintings. So really open it up to you. And that's kind of the unique nature of this competition, learning from each other. We have 5 more minutes. I just wanted to slip in a reminder here. A couple of you have asked about the certificate. There is an academic certificate that will be supplied to you if you submit the project, as well as you complete the Introduction to Humanitarian Logistics course. All of that information can be found in the emails I send to you, on the resources page, and in your handbook. But if you have any questions, let me know. We are not doing participation certificates. We are doing academic certificates. So there's more value to that. And that certificate is also being certified by the HUMLOG Institute, which is pretty cool. And then last reminder, because people ask me as well, the solution is due at 11:59 p.m. Eastern time on Sunday. We gave you the weekend to work on this because I was a student. Everyone here, at least at one point in life, was a student. So let's see here. Interpretive dance about wildfire response. Kyoto, we are looking forward to that for sure. And did anyone else have any other questions in the meantime? Let's see here. Nope. So if I could just open it up to just one last comment from each of the judges, I think that would round this out. And we really appreciate your time. So Gyöngyi, if you want to give us just any last minute thoughts.
It was always the most difficult. I mean, I guess my biggest message is that based on your questions, I can already see that you've been thinking about it, that you have the right questions in a way, that you know what you struggle with and what you want to just clarify. So you are very much on your way, and we are looking forward to getting all of your suggestions and solutions.
Wonderful. Noni?
Yes, I would like to say trust your instincts. I think questioning yourself is a very natural part of the process, but just remain in tune with your instincts, because as I said, we are learning from you. We are not checking if you have learned anything. We are learning from you. So don't hold anything back. Don't think about pleasing us, but really think about what solutions would work for the communities that you are focusing on. And then we will see how it goes from there. I'm looking forward to seeing the final submissions.
Thank you, Noni. Pete, did you have any last words to say?
I'm going to add on to what Noni just said, using a metaphor from my coaching days and coaching American football. Leave it all on the field, you know, do whatever you can. And like all the other judges have said, I think we're going to learn a lot too. So go with what you got and don't hold back.
Well, I hope that inspires everyone. Absolutely. Amedee, anything you want to add?
Nothing to add, Maddie. I'm already excited, and I agree. The questions are excellent, and I hope I know this is work, but I hope you have fun doing it, and I know that we will have fun working on it together. So best of luck to everyone.
Thank you. And Armand, end of your day here.
Yeah, this was a nice way to end it. But a few words: substance, authenticity, simplicity, and creativity. And I was quite inspired by Kyoto talking about creative dance. If only all of my MBA assignments could be in spoken word or creative dance, then I would have a whole lot more fun learning, as Noni says, together with everyone. So I'm looking forward to that as well.
Absolutely. And again, that is what we are looking for in this competition. I hope you all had some of your questions answered. As always, I'm available over email for anything else lingering that you may have. Thank you so much, judges, for being here today. Thank you, all of you students who have been in and out during the beginning of your day or the end of your day. Or some of you maybe the middle of your day. But thank you as always, and we look forward to those submissions on the 24th. So thank you, everyone, and we'll see you later.